I've searched for Total Drama's most flawed, ridiculous, and nonsensical challenges of all time, and selected the 5 challenges that I believe have the most messed up dynamics, absurd, and even counterintuitive rules and rewards, as well as those that are just downright pointless. Granted, it's a bit tricky to distinguish between nonsensical and unfair challenges at times, as the most illogical ones inevitably end up being outrageously unfair as well, so I'd like to hear your opinion on the matter too, but for now, let's jump right into the video. At number 5, we have the challenges from Monster Cash. To this day, I still wonder why they even exist in the first place.
Is he Duck? Duck!
Goose!
The episode introduces the 14 cast members that will be competing in this new season, sure, but the challenges in it are perhaps the most pointless of all times, which is not surprising considering Total Drama Action's unique, time-wasting nature, because having 26 episodes and only 15 contestants overall is the dumbest choice ever, and it's ridiculous to even have 2 double eliminations in the season as well, but I'm ranting. For the first challenge, the contestants are required to race to a set of trailers, the ones they will be living in for the entirety of the game, before a giant animatronic monster controlled by Chef can catch them. Those who manage to get to the trailers without getting caught win no reward of any kind, so it doesn't really matter who wins and who doesn't.
It took you 10.5 hours to walk 3 city blocks? That's just sad, man.
The next challenge instead is a reward, and it sees the boys against the girls in a contest to find a key hidden between buffet props made of sawdust and wax, with the winning team getting the first pick of the trailers. However, bear in mind that originally the trailers were supposed to be identical to one another, so winning the key finding challenge wouldn't have made any difference. Now, getting to pick the trailers would have made more sense after the monster squashed one of them, if only Chef didn't proceed to step on the other trailer as well minutes later, making the choice completely irrelevant and the second challenge completely pointless as well. Season 2's challenges are often pointless, as half of them are reward ones, with the rewards being completely useless, but at least they do have rewards. Well, this one doesn't, so the whole episode really has no right to exist. However, I don't see why Chef willingly destroyed the trailers if he knew he was the one in charge of fixing them afterwards. And I can't tell whether that's visible disappointment in his face, or if that's a smile and he's hiding his regret behind it. At number 4, the Second Chance Challenge from Aftermath After Mayhem.
Must resist urge to murder.
In World Tour's third Aftermath, Blaney announces that one of the Peanut Gallery members will get another chance at the $1 million in the properly named Total Drama Second Chance Challenge, where 5 will be selected to compete, and the winner will get back in the game. Each of the former contestants is given a can of peanuts, 5 of which contain golden Chris heads. You find one, you move on to the actual challenge, a giant board game containing 12 different mini-challenges. The 5 contestants will take turns at rolling the dice and hop their way along the game board. Very linear until you get to the last square of the board and its nonsensical rules. But let me walk you through it. When Beth rolls to the last space, she's tasked with catching an intern dressed up like Jack the Ripper and bringing him to one of the guards from the London Challenge. Once she does all that, she has to answer one final question about Duncan, with the catch being the first one to answer it correctly wins. And the wording here is crucial, as the first person to answer it implies that any of the other contestants still playing the board game can take a shot, without the need to either get to the last space, nor to complete the London theme challenge. Which is already a bit of a stretch, but for how messed up of a rule it might be, we could accept it. We could, if only that's what they meant by person, because they meant it in the most generic way possible, meaning even the other members of the Peanut Gallery who did not find the golden Chris head could take a shot at the question, and that somehow includes the host as well. In fact, Blaney yelled out the answer in frustration, hoping to get the episode over with, and won. She won the challenge and entered the game when she was not even a contestant to begin with. Unlike Jeff, for example. He's a host, but he used to compete a while ago, so that would have made some sort of sense at least. Of course, I'm glad she entered the game. I did enjoy having her compete for those 2 episodes. Nonetheless, logic clearly has no place within this show.
Oh, and I have an invisible jet right here. Or did I leave it over there?
And number 3, Ocean's 8 or 9. Notice how most of these challenges are from the second season. Quality drop.
I knew I could win this, even with a team of complete duds.
LeSean and Owen have been locked up in 2 different safes, along with all the tools each team will need to commit a movie-perfect bank robbery. The Grips and the Gaffers need to crack the safes, rescue their teammates, and grab the equipment. The first team to reach and rob the First National Bank of Chris wins the first half of the challenge. Now, it all sounds pretty linear in theory, but the whole thing is inherently flawed, as apparently the teams neither need to rescue their locked up teammates, nor to get the bank robbery equipment in order to win the first portion of the challenge. They could have simply rushed to the bank with made up props to win with extreme ease and in no time, which is what the Gaffers ended up doing, meaning the safe cracking thing was completely superfluous. Not to mention, the teams could have probably just drawn a gun on a piece of paper, used that to rob the bank, and would have won anyway. For the second part of the challenge, the teams have to assemble some getaway cars and race to the finish line. And although to this day it's still a mystery to me how the Grips managed to catch up with the Gaffers without a working go-kart, it seems worth mentioning how the getaway cars don't even need to be fully operational in order to win the race. In fact, crossing the finish line with some of the junk from the pile of go-kart parts would have been considered legit, as it's what Courtney and her team of duds tried to do. Now, since the Grips managed to catch up with the other team by foot, it means either the go-karts were painfully slow, or the road from the top of the hill to the finish line was incredibly short. So either way, doing what Chris instructed the contestants to do, building the go-karts, was both unnecessary and incredibly time-consuming. And finally, obviously, the reward system for the bank robbery is just ridiculous. The one and only reward the winning team gets is non-negotiable worthless Chris cash. Meanwhile, the losing team gains 1 more teammate. And how does that make any sense?
Non-negotiable Chris cash, accepted only in the Total Drama Action Craft Services tent towards the purchase of water from the tap?
And number 2, get a clue. I admit this is one of my favorite episodes from Action, but the dynamics of the challenge are quite questionable. For the first half of the challenge, each of the competitors is required to gather fingerprints and DNA samples from any of the other competitors. As for the second part of the game, Lindsay, Courtney, Duncan, Beth, and Harold have to solve the murder and figure out who killed the murdered body of Chris's dead deceased corpse. The first half ends up being completely irrelevant once again, as neither Lindsay was penalized for not collecting the samples, nor Courtney earned a reward for gathering 2 sets of handprints and hair, with the cheese puffs not counting as a reward. Later on, during the crime-solving portion of the game, Lindsay, as much as I love her, manages to gather some pretty random and circumstantial evidence and proves Courtney was the murderer, which ultimately wins her the challenge. Now, with all due respect to Detective Lindsay her hotness, Courtney did not commit the fake murder. The entirety of the mystery is based on nothing, apparently. How did the challenge even work? The TDA producers were just waiting for the contestants to point fingers at one another until someone would eventually accuse Courtney of committing the murder? Murder? And why her, specifically? And if so, how was Courtney supposed to win the challenge? Was she supposed to blame herself when she wasn't even aware she was guilty in the first place? That is just flawed reasoning.
Where's that annoying music coming from?
And finally, that's off the chain, the infamous bike challenge obviously takes the top spot here. And you might not approve of my previous picks, but I'm pretty sure you do agree with this. The campers are required to build their own bikes from scratch, using scrap from a pile of bike parts and props from the Arts and Crafts Center. And although Chris claims the best design would win, that's never brought up again in the episode, so whatever. For the first actual challenge, the campers have to switch bikes, drawing names from a helmet to see whose bike each camper is riding for a pretty regular race for once. This is a little twisted, but the campers whose bikes make it to the finish line get to ride their own bikes later in the second and final part of the challenge. Those aforementioned campers will be competing for invincibility, racing a course, and avoiding a few death traps along the way. However, there is a catch, as the first one to cross the finish line wins invincibility, while the last one to cross it instantly gets voted off the island, which, you guessed it, consequently grants invincibility to all the campers who did not qualify for the the final race, effectively meaning the contestants who build the best bikes are on the chopping block, while those who build the crappier ones can sit back, relax, and stay in the game. And no need to mention, there's no point in granting the winner invincibility if someone else is instantly getting eliminated anyway. What makes this whole matter even more outrageously unfair and nonsensical is how LaShawn and Easy didn't partake in the challenge at all, but somehow got away with it scot-free, thereby getting invincibility by not competing. So everyone got invincibility except for the campers who build the best bikes.
Okay, I'm so confused.
So not even the tiniest bit of this episode actually makes sense. But it does not end here, as the logic behind the final race itself is completely messed up as well. Heather crosses the finish line first, and Lindsay comes in second a few moments later. But since the last camper to cross the finish line would have been automatically eliminated, and since Duncan and Owen didn't cross the finish line at all, Lindsay ended up being eliminated, all for a technicality. And in what universe is not finishing the race preferable to coming in second? All this, of course, resulted in one of the unfairest eliminations in the history of the show, and thousands of people choking on their own rage to this day, including yours truly. But these are just my thoughts, so do tell me in the comments which Total Drama challenges you guys think make zero sense, and possibly if you'd be interested in seeing some more Total Drama content on the channel. I'll see you guys next time, ciao!